This story happened in an abandoned building in New Jersey. I'm not going to say exactly where for obvious reasons. I live about 10 minutes away from this massive decaying complex that's been sitting empty for years. No one knows exactly what it used to be. Some say it was a factory, others say an old warehouse distribution center. All I know is that it's huge, covered in graffiti and surrounded by rusted fencing, with no trespassing signs posted every 20 feet. My friends and I had been there plenty of times. It was kind of our thing. On this particular afternoon, it was me, Kevin, Andrew, and Pierce. We had nothing better to do, so we decided to head over and mess around for a bit. We'd usually explore different sections of the building, or play stupid games like hide and seek just to make it more intense. We parked behind a large dumpster near the back lot, partially hidden by overgrown trees. From the outside, the place looked worse than usual. Broken windows, cracked brick walls, and vines crawling up the sides. There was only one way in that we knew of, a shattered window on the side of the building, so we took turns climbing through. The second I dropped inside, the temperature felt different, a lot colder. Even though it was bright outside, the inside was dark. Sunlight barely made it through the dusty windows, and the air smelled like mold and old wood. We explored for about 20 minutes, walking through different rooms, kicking debris around, checking out old offices and storage areas. Everything felt normal, like every other time. Eventually, Pierce joked that we should play hide and seek again. We forced Kevin to be the seeker since he lost last time. He rolled his eyes, but ultimately agreed. He covered his face against a crumbling wall and started counting loudly. The rest of us ran in different directions. I don't know why, but instead of hiding somewhere smart, I ran towards a staircase that led down into a lower level. The air got colder the further I went. My footsteps echoed down the stairwell, and I remember thinking how stupid it was to hide somewhere that trapped me underground. At the bottom was a large room with cracked concrete floors and two narrow windows near the ceiling. Thin strips of daylight barely lit the space. There was just enough to see shapes. Against the far wall was a large old closet. The doors were slightly open. It was perfect, I thought. I crossed the room quietly and slipped inside. The second I shut the door, everything went pitch black, completely black. I couldn't see my hands in front of my face. All I could hear was my breathing, slow at first, then heavier as the adrenaline kicked in. I stood there for maybe a minute, then I heard it. Breathing, really faint, barely audible. At first I told myself it was just my echo. The space was small, sound carries weird in tight rooms. But then it happened again. A slow inhale right behind me. Every muscle in my body locked up. I didn't want to move because I already knew. I wasn't alone in that closet. Before I could react, I felt something cold wrap around my hand. A grip. It was strong and tight. I screamed instantly, trying to yank my arm back, but whoever was holding me wouldn't let go. The grip tightened. "Shut up," a man's voice whispered in my ear. "Don't talk." My entire body went numb. He stepped closer. I could feel him right behind me now. I had been standing inches away from him the entire time, and I didn't even know it. He started pulling me backward out of the closet. I stumbled into the dim light. I caught a small glimpse of him for half a second. He had dirty clothes, a scruffy beard, and sunken eyes. He didn't look surprised to see me. He grabbed my hoodie and began dragging me towards the stairwell. My friends were upstairs somewhere, but the building was so big they probably wouldn't hear anything. When we reached the main floor, he didn't stop. He pulled me straight towards the broken window we had climbed through. That's when my stomach dropped. He knew the way out. He shoved me halfway through the window, broken glass scraped against my jeans. He climbed out behind me, never letting go of my hand. I thought about running, but he was bigger than me, a lot stronger. His grip tightened around the back of my hoodie, choking me slightly as he dragged me across the overgrown lot. And that's when I saw it. A car. It was hidden behind a different cluster of trees. It was parked in a way that made it nearly invisible from the road. He wasn't just some random guy wandering around. I started resisting harder, digging my shoes into the dirt, but that only made him angrier. He yanked me forward aggressively. "Don't make this worse," he muttered. And then, a loud, heavy thump. The grip on my hoodie released. I stumbled forward and turned around just in time to see the man collapse to the ground. Andrew was standing behind him, holding a metal baseball bat we kept in Kevin's trunk. His face was pale. "I saw him take you," he said, breathing heavily. "I was looking for you and saw you getting dragged." Pierce and Kevin came running seconds later. The man wasn't moving, but we didn't wait to see if he would. We all ran. All four of us sprinted back to the car. We peeled out of that lot so fast the tires screeched. About 5 minutes down the road, we pulled over, all of us shaking. We debated calling the police. The only reason we hesitated was because of the no trespassing signs. There was a lot of them. We knew we could get in serious trouble. But what if that guy woke up? What if he was living there? What if someone else wandered in like we did? So we ended up calling. We kept the details vague, said we saw a suspicious man inside the building, mentioning the hidden car. We didn't mention the bat, and we didn't mention hide and seek. The police said they'd check it out, but I never heard anything after that. No news reports, no updates, nothing. Sometimes I wonder if they found him, or if by the time they got there, he was already gone. The worst part isn't what happened, it's what could have happened. He was in that closet before I got there. He was standing in the dark. And if Andrew hadn't seen me being dragged out, I don't even want to think about where that car would have taken me. But I know one thing for sure. I will never step foot inside an abandoned building again. This happened last fall, and I still haven't told many people about it, because I genuinely don't know how to explain it. There's an abandoned motel about 20 minutes outside my town. It sits just off an old highway that barely anyone uses anymore. You could see it from the road. 2 stories, long balcony walkway, and every door facing the parking lot. The sign out front is half broken, hanging by one chain, swinging in the wind. I went there alone. I know, that was stupid. I'd driven past it dozens of times and always wondered what it looked like inside. One Friday around 5 p.m., while it was still light out, I finally pulled in. I told myself I was taking photos for a film project. In reality, I just wanted the adrenaline. The parking lot was completely empty. Cracked asphalt, weeds growing through the painted lines, and every door either boarded up or slightly open. I parked near the edge of the lot, facing the exit, just in case. I don't know why I did that, but I'm glad I did. Most of the ground floor rooms were locked tight, but one near the corner was slightly open. The number on the door read 214, even though it was clearly on the first floor. I remember thinking that was odd. Regardless, I pushed the door open slowly. The smell hit me immediately. Mold, rot, old carpet soaked with something I didn't want to think about. The room was trashed. Mattress flipped over, bathroom mirror shattered, graffiti covering the walls, beer bottles scattered across the floor. I walked around for maybe a minute, took a couple pictures, and that's when I heard it. A knock, 3 slow taps from the wall behind me. I froze. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, just 3 deliberate knocks. I turned towards the wall. On the other side of it should have been room 215. I waited. Nothing, just silence. I told myself it was the pipes. Old buildings make noise all the time. I stepped outside the room, and that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There was no door to room 215. I specifically remember seeing 213, then 216. 214 was the last door on the side of the building. There was no 215. No boarded up entrance, nothing. The layout didn't make sense. The building wasn't wide enough to fit another room between 214 and the corner. I stood there staring at the wall from the outside, trying to understand. And that's when I heard it again. 3 knocks this time. It came from inside 214. I slowly turned back. I hadn't closed the door all the way when I walked out. It was still cracked open. I stepped closer, peeked inside. There was nothing. No movement, no sound. I didn't think. I just started backing away. And that's when I saw movement. Not inside 214. It was upstairs. On the 2nd floor balcony, someone was standing outside one of the rooms. Directly above me, just standing there. I couldn't make out their face because of the shadow from the overhang, but I could see the outline clearly. They were tall and very thin, and they were standing completely still. I stared at them for a good 5 seconds, but they didn't move. "Hello?" I called out, immediately regretting it because there was no response. I took a few steps backwards towards the stairs leading down to my car, and then they did something I still can't explain. They slowly lifted their arm and pointed down at room 214. My heart started racing. I looked back at the open doorway behind me. It was still dark inside. When I looked back up at the balcony, they were gone, completely gone. That's when I heard something slam inside 214. The door swung open fully, hitting the wall hard. I flinched, and in that split second, I swear I saw someone standing inside the bathroom area. Just for a second, then nothing. I ran as fast as I could. I didn't care if I looked paranoid or crazy. I jumped in my car, locked the doors immediately, started the engine and floored it, without looking back. When I got home, I tried to calm myself down. I researched the motel. It shut down in the early 2000s after a fire in one of the rooms. Official reports said only one person died, but older forums told a different story. Apparently, during renovations in the late 90s, workers discovered a sealed-off room behind one of the first floor walls. There was no door, no windows, just a hollow space between rooms. Inside they found furniture, a mattress and food wrappers, like someone had been living there. There was no records of who built it, and there was no explanation for why it was sealed. All it said was the renovation stopped shortly after. Here's the part that still keeps me up at night. A few days later, I went back on Google Maps. I zoomed in on the layout of the motel. There is no room 214. The numbering skips from 213 to 216. I know what I walked into. I know I heard knocking, and I know someone pointed at the room from above. But according to every layout I can find, the room doesn't exist. I couldn't have hallucinated the entire thing. At least that's what I keep telling myself. Because if I didn't imagine it, then something was knocking from a room that isn't supposed to be there, and something wanted me to go back inside. This happened a couple years ago. My cousin and I thought it would be a good idea to bike out to an abandoned building about 30 minutes from our neighborhood. The ride there was honestly the best part. We took this long trail that cut through the woods. Sunlight was breaking through the trees, there were birds everywhere, and the air smelled clean and fresh. It didn't feel creepy at all. If anything, it felt peaceful. But the closer we got to the building, the more the atmosphere changed. The trees started looking thinner. The bright green leaves faded into this dull, almost sickly color. Some of the trunks were split, and they were rotting. The trail got quieter too. No birds and no wind. Just the sound of our tires crunching over gravel and twigs. I remember joking that it looked like the forest was dying around the building. Then we saw it. Through the trees, the building was covered in graffiti. Broken windows lining almost every wall, and parts of the roof looked collapsed. From the outside, it looked completely destroyed. It was around 3 p.m., broad daylight. That made us feel a lot safer, like nothing bad could happen in the middle of the day. We leaned our bikes against a small tree and locked them up. There were multiple no trespassing signs posted near the entrance, but like idiots, we ignored them. The front doors were boarded up, but a side entrance had the boards ripped off, so we walked in. Even though it was bright outside, the interior was dim. Sunlight barely pushed through the dirty windows. Dust floated in the air, visible in the light beams. The floor was covered in debris, old papers, broken ceiling tiles, and shattered glass. It smelled like mold and something metallic. We started walking through the first floor, peeking into rooms. Most of them were empty. Some still had rusted bed frames, overturned cabinets. But that's when we heard it. A footstep, a single footstep, from a nearby room down the hall, like someone walked across some debris. We both froze. "Did you hear that?" my cousin whispered. Before I could answer, there was another footstep, the same exact sound. We looked at each other for a second, then slowly walked towards the room the sound came from. My heart was pounding. I just kept telling myself it was just an animal, maybe a raccoon. We turned a corner, but the room was empty, completely empty. There was no open windows and no movement, just broken tiles and graffiti on the walls. We stood there listening. Nothing. We both laughed it off, but it wasn't a real laugh. A few minutes later, we heard something else. Music. It was faint at first, like an old radio playing somewhere upstairs. It sounded distorted, static mixed with a melody. I couldn't make out the song, but it sounded old. It was definitely coming from the second floor. We looked at each other again, and without saying anything, we both started towards the staircase. Each step creaked loudly as we climbed. Halfway up, the music got slightly louder, then it abruptly stopped. We reached the top floor. There was silence. We checked every room, empty hospital beds, rusted equipment, torn curtains hanging from the ceiling rails, but no radio, no speaker, and no phone, nothing that could have made that sound. That's when the feeling changed. It wasn't exciting anymore. It felt unsettling. We decided to head back downstairs and check one more section before leaving, and that's when we heard the loudest sound yet. A massive bang. It came from a room at the end of the hall, like a metal door being slammed as hard as possible. This made both of us jump. There was no way that was an animal. We slowly walked towards the room, my legs feeling heavy, like my body didn't want to go any further. When we reached the doorway, we hesitated, then looked inside. It was empty. Once again, no swinging door, no broken window, and nothing out of place. At that point, we were done. We turned around and walked straight out of the building. After that third incident, we didn't want to stick around. The second we stepped back into the sunlight, it felt like we can breathe again. We grabbed our bikes and didn't stop pedaling until we were far away from that place. Later that night, curiosity got the better of us. We looked up the building's address. It turns out it used to be a hospital. It shut down in the early 1980s after a series of investigations. Apparently there was multiple reports of patients claiming they heard footsteps in empty hallways at night. Some said they heard music playing in their rooms when no radios were present. But this is the part that stuck with me. In 1978, a nurse reported hearing loud banging from one of the less used wings of the hospital. Security checked that area. They found nothing. But 2 days later, a patient from that same wing disappeared, and they never found him. There were also rumors that one of the doctors had been running unauthorized experiments on terminally ill patients in a basement, keeping them isolated for extended observations. Records from that time were mysteriously lost in a small electrical fire in the storage room. The hospital shut down not long after. Some people online claimed the building was demolished, but it clearly wasn't because we were just inside. And here's what still bothers me. When we heard everything, it happened in the exact same order described in these old reports. Footsteps in the hallway, music from above, then banging from a sealed off room. That same pattern. I don't know if someone was in there with us, or if something else was, but I'm glad we didn't stay long enough to find out.